purchase any coverage extensions under the D&O policy?
Yes, under the D&O policy, one can include one of or any of the following additional covers that I'm going to mention. As we mentioned, there are regulatory events, so you can have a full limit which is available for costs incurred relating to a regulatory event, including those of the manager and the fund, as well as the insured persons. This cover as well will provide the client with expenses for on-site visits, including production of documents, interviews, and for investigations or inquiries by a regulatory body. It will also represent costs for internal investigation, which we know that it will entail a lot of cost and time to consume and get together all the information for a particular investigation. There is also what we call mitigation costs, which the underwriter will be ready to cover for costs incurred in mitigating the consequences of any act or omission in circumstances where, had such payment not been made, a claim would have been made. So the underwriter would prefer paying a mitigation cost rather the full claim, which will obviously be much more. There is also the possibility of a fund creating a new fund, and that is normally, we give it as an extension so that you will have an automatic cover for the new funds that are created. This normally happens at no additional cost until the end of the policy period, but this is only the case where the activity is the same as the previously established fund. If it is different to the established fund, you will have to obviously inform underwriters immediately. There is also the case if it is listed in the USA, we have to inform underwriters immediately because different limits and different requirements will apply. When talking about funds and asset managers, it is also important to have a professional liability for any actual or alleged wrongful acts arising from the setup and the maintenance of the fund. This will be in line with the IFMD and will cover loss of documents showing title of assets of a fund entity, misrepresentations again or misleading statements, and also acts, errors or omissions resulting from a breach in legal and regulatory obligations. So we will have also the covers which we mentioned in the directors and officers, but always arising from a professional negligence from the setup and the maintenance of the fund.
Considering the importance that cybersecurity and cyber fraud is garnering in the financial service industry, how would the D&O policy cater for any losses emanating from such fraud?
Yes, in order to be covered for such fraud, the policy would have to be extended. Now, not all underwriters extend this policy for cyber risk and social engineering risk. But nowadays, there is a specific cyber liability policy, and we normally recommend that the company, the entity, will have a separate cyber liability policy. Basically, this will cover any expenses incurred to notify maybe breaches which you will have, legal liability to the data subjects and other third party, the actual legal expenses, the fines and penalties, and also the costs incurred for the network systems. As we all know, in May 2018, we're going to be phased now with the new General Data Protection Regulation, and this is going to impose other obligations on the companies. And this policy will obviously have some effect because it will any expenses which will be incurred even for notification of the breaches and maybe the fines and penalties, which we know that are going to be much higher than the current Data Protection Act, can be covered under such policies.
Okay, but it is important to emphasize that it is a separate policy. It is, I mean, this cyber fraud and what you have are not covered by the main D&O policy, but it's a separate policy.
There are extensions being given under the directors and officers, but it will not be a wider cover as one will have under a separate cyber liability policy. So ideally, we suggest and we recommend that
you have a separate policy for
exactly.
cybercrime.
Exactly.
To conclude, Fiona, one can say that one can appreciate the importance of such a D&O policy, as this allows the directors as well as officers to make decisions without the threat of personal liability hanging over them. Once again, Fiona, thank you very much for your insight and time. Thank you.